Thank you for tuning in to Macroview Television and welcome to a brand new edition of Taiwan Outlook, the program that presents the people and their stories on Taiwan. I'm your host, Wu Ruiguo. We know there are many outstanding overseas Taiwanese youth around the world. And on today's program, we get to meet one of them. He is Michael Sun, who's currently a councillor of the City of Johannesburg in South Africa. Welcome to our program, Michael.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you for having me.
All right, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. First of all, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, Raymond. I think I can start to tell you that I was born in a very small town in Taiwan.
Oh,
in Lugang.
Oh, Lugang. Okay.
So it's a small fishing village
Okay.
in my younger days, but I believe now it's a much hyped tourist attraction.
Okay.
So that's where I was born. I grew up in Taichung.
Okay.
That's where I had my primary schooling.
Okay.
And soon thereafter, we immigrated to South Africa, where then I've spent, the rest of my life until now.
Okay. And as I said at the beginning of the program, you were selected as one of the 10 outstanding Taiwanese overseas youth in the year 2015.
Yes.
And you were also, back in the year 2002, you were also selected as one of the outstanding overseas, Taiwanese youth as well. What did all these honors, mean to you, Michael? I mean, does it serve as ways of motivating yourself to do even more, in the overseas community where you are settled? And does it, give you more responsibility at the same time to serve as a role model for other younger, Taiwanese youth?
Yes, Raymond, certainly. It's, of course, a great honor to be nominated, let alone be selected for the award.
Yes.
I think it's so much more of a responsibility than an honor. I think the honorary title would last for a very long time, but I think the social responsibility that goes with the trophy and the certificates and the moments of glory is so much further and beyond than what people see in front of the scenes, as your TV man would call it.
Yes.
I think it's encouragement. It's a recognition for what I've done abroad, overseas. And I think I've certainly served that purpose of being a model to the younger people that's behind me. Okay. So it's a huge encouragement to say to them, keep on doing it, you'll make it, and when you do get there, you'll be recognized. And of course, help those that's younger than you to come along the way and achieve the same achievements.
Okay, all right. And you mentioned, Michael, that you were born in Lugang.
Yes.
And then you grew up in Taichung.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences or any of the stories that you're willing to share with us while you were growing up in the central part of Taiwan?
Yeah. My memory as a child, or my childhood memories are still very strong in my mind.
Vivid. Okay.
Vivid.
Yeah.
I remember that when we moved in Taichung, it's in those days it was still very. It's not as metropolitan as it's now.
Yeah.
I went back to visit the house where we stayed many years after.
Okay.
Of course, we don't own the house anymore.
Okay.
And when I knocked on the door, I said to the owner, I used to live here when I was a child. I think the owner thought I was some sort of a crook.
Okay.
And he didn't want to let me in. And when I explained to him the layout of the house, then he believed me. He says, no, come in and have a look.
Okay.
Of course, that brought back a lot of childhood memories.
Yes.
And I think, Lugang has also given me a lot of character. The history and the people and the culture. It's some place that's very unique.
Of course.
I've traveled a lot with my family and with my wife.
Yes.
And there's no place that reminiscence with Lugang. So it's always going to have a very special place in my heart.
Okay. And Michael, we understand that you stay in Taichung and finish your primary school.
Yes.
And you emigrated with your family to South Africa at the age of 12.
Yes, that's right.
And, there might have been a number of reasons, for your family to make such a decision. But let me ask you, what was going through your mind when your parents told you, hey, Michael, today could be the last day of school for you in Taichung because next week we're going to South Africa? What was going through your mind? Were you very excited, looking forward to a brand new start in a place, or what was going through your mind?
Raymond, as a child, I think the feelings were very mixed. I remember my father told us, I think a couple of months before, that we were leaving to go to this place, South Africa. So as a very excited young boy, I started to tell all my friends, no, we are leaving, we're going to South Africa. In those days, I think South Africa was not well known.
No.
In fact, people didn't associate South Africa as a country.
No.
They probably thought it was part of Africa. So all my friends said, no, I was lying and I was not telling the truth. I was just, pulling their legs that I'm going somewhere. Until the day that we got onto the plane, and that feeling started to set in. It says we are really leaving Taiwan. So as a child, I was very confused. I didn't know where we were going. I certainly didn't know anything about South Africa other than the ornaments and the food and the photos that he's brought back from South Africa. So as a child, I was very confused and excited and a little bit scared. But, deep down, you also don't want to leave the place where you were born and you grew up.
Where your friends were.
Yes, so that was the difficult part. But, I think because of a younger age, you learn to deal with it, much quicker. Yeah, but no, I was certainly very excited. Yeah. Very excited.
All right. And Michael, let me ask you, since you were going to a country, at the time, not just you, but most of the people in Taiwan knew very little about. And I would suppose your English was probably back then was limited as well. And then going to South Africa and then starting school, was it pretty much a cultural shock for you? And how did you find ways to assimilate, to make new friends?
In those days, English was not a syllabus in the primary schools.
Of course.
So I had to learn to speak English when we arrived in South Africa. School was a big event because we went to school, but unfortunately we didn't understand. I mean, we could hear people talking.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we didn't understand what they were saying. But I think you're at that age where you're so curious and you're so excited, and then you're quick to learn.
Yes, of course.
I remember all of a sudden one day I realized I could actually understand what they are saying.
Okay.
And the words just came out from my mouth, and it became very natural as a habit. So learning was quite a learning curve, and of course we have to get used to the different ways of living, the culture. So cultural shock, yes, and I think moreover a cultural excitement.
Yeah. And given the fact that you had very few friends at that time, and South Africa back then was very different from South Africa today. We'll talk more about that later in the program. But how did you then find that balance of somehow retaining your roots, your connections to Taiwan, but also on the other hand, try to know as much as rapidly as possible about things and people in South Africa? How did you do it?
My father was very strict.
Okay.
I think I should say that to start. He's no longer with us. He's passed on for many, many years. But the day that we went to school, in fact, before we went to school, he said to us, you'll speak Chinese at home.
Okay.
But as soon as you leave the house, you speak whatever language that you need to.
Okay.
But as soon as you come home, you'll speak Chinese. Okay. So he's always had that house rule that we retain the language at home, which I'm very glad that he did. Okay. Later on in years that I see many of my friends that had a similar background, they prefer to speak in the foreign tongues, the English or the local language, than Chinese Mandarin or Taiwanese. So I suppose I was lucky in the way that my father was strict. It was also, I think, in a way that we were very lucky that I had a very good schooling and I had very caring teachers.
Good.
We were the only family, Chinese family in the whole of
the school,
the city that we stayed. So we didn't have much opportunity to interact with other Chinese people. There were so few in those days that when you see another Chinese person, you're so happy about it, you're so excited. But I think the way that was a catalyst and sped up the process of where we had to learn the local ways of life and local cultures. And I think as a boy, the sporting, after school sporting events were also quite helpful.
Yes.
So I played rugby, I played the cricket games. So, in a way...
You made friends quickly.
Yes, so it was very quick and I think it was a fairly painless process for me.
Okay. And finally, Michael, let me ask you, I mean, looking back on that decision by your parents to move to South Africa, do you have any regrets? Did you ever think about how your life would be different if you had stayed in Taiwan all these years?
Yes, I think all the time.
Oh, okay.
I do often as a casual, discussion, conversation with my wife, I said, would we have met if...
you didn't go?
No, I never went to South Africa. By the way, we met in South Africa.
Good.
So it is quite a, mental exercise that what would I have been if I stayed in Taiwan?
Yeah.
I never had any regrets. I love South Africa. It's my home.
Yes.
It's as much as I love Taiwan.
Yeah.
But it's so much more, vast in difference that I am able to have
benefit from both
benefit
sides.
Of the best of both worlds. Yes.
Exactly. Good. I want to ask you another question because we know that South Africa was under apartheid.
That's right.
From the years 1948 all the way to 1994, and that was also the time that you were there and you made the decision that you wanted to pursue the study of law once you were in college, in university. Why did you make such a decision? Did your parents have some input into it, or is it pretty much your own self-awareness that this is the area where you want to pursue your career?
My father had a lot of influence, but one thing he never did was he never forced me to choose my own career path. He let me alone. He said, make your choices wisely, and that's what you'll do for the rest of your life, hopefully. And one thing he mentioned to me out of all my choices that I've never considered was law. I've never saw myself as a lawyer in my high school days. And I think as a high school graduate, the last thing you want to do is to go bury yourself back into the books. But I chose law because he said something to me that was quite important. The reason that him and his family came to, his brothers and sisters, came to South Africa was to start up another business.
Yes.
He said to me that, he said to me, son, out of all the years that I've been a businessman in South Africa, I've yet to come through a good lawyer. So I said, well, look, there are so many.
Yeah.
He said, well, look, it's very similar to being a doctor. You've got a good doctor, he'll treat you, you have care in his heart for you, but he couldn't find a decent lawyer throughout his business career.
Yes.
So he said, well, if you really want to study law and help those Chinese people that will come, those Taiwanese people that will come to South Africa.
Okay.
So that's where I registered and I applied for law. I was accepted.
Okay.
And, after that, there's a long journey. It was a very lonely journey because all my other friends studied something else. So I was the lonely Asian person in my university in the law faculty. So that's quite a tough 4 years for me.
Yeah, I can imagine. I will also imagine that after, becoming a lawyer in South Africa, at that time, like I said, South Africa was still under apartheid. Right. It's not yet democratic. Yeah. And what did you want to change? As a, probably the first, Chinese, South African lawyer in South Africa at the time?
Yes. I didn't want to change any laws.
Okay.
Because I knew that the country was going through drastic, historical
changes. Yes.
I remember when we wrote our final exams in the final year, the laws changed so much that our professors told us, well, look, you just have to study both versions because he doesn't know when the laws will be passed. So for us, it was quite a historical moment that we had to learn, laws from the old regime and the new regime.
Yes.
But one thing that I understood quite firm, in my heart was that although I'm not empowered as a young lawyer, or perhaps a little bit too ambitious, that I would use the laws to help my countrymen, to help those that couldn't afford, legal services. So that's what I had in mind when I was much younger, and I think it's still very much a principle for me today.
Exactly.
To change the law of a country, it's not the easiest process, as you would understand, Raymond.
Yes.
But I think to use the law towards your own advantage and the advantage of your clients, I think that's more important.
Yes. And also, in addition to your law career, that Michael, you now is a councillor yes. of the City of Johannesburg, in South Africa. It's one of the largest cities, in South Africa.
That's right.
And let me ask you two things. First, what do you do as a councillor? And then what are some of your major responsibilities? And secondly, why did you want to serve in the city council? Is that, I don't know if that's, what's called, but why did you want to get involved in politics, local politics?
Yes. If I may answer your second question first.
Okay, please.
It was by coincidence that I hosted a delegation of the Taiwanese members of parliament.
Really?
Yes,
Good.
of the legislature yuan to South Africa.
Okay.
And then I accompanied them to visit the Parliament of South Africa. That's when I got into touch with the politicians in South Africa. And they were quite surprised that they were quite taken back. There was a Chinese lawyer, a Taiwanese lawyer in South Africa. So they said, would you be interested in coming to our meetings? So it was the first meeting, it was the second meeting, and not long after that, I thought, I'm actually working for this political party.
Good.
And the more I got involved, the more I understood how the political landscape of South Africa is and how the political system works.
Okay.
And you asked me about Johannesburg. Another name for Johannesburg is Igoli.
Oh,
okay. It means the city of gold.
Oh,
As you would understand that there were a lot of gold mines in Johannesburg. But the sad reality is that the extreme ends of the society are so extreme. There are a vast number of poverty in Johannesburg. And there are people living below the bread line, as we call it. They barely make ends meet on a daily basis. Okay. So the function of a councillor is, of course, the city's oversee the city's executive administration, the city's government. Yes. In many areas where we serve the community. Okay. We are, of course, elected public representatives. We represent the public, and we take their concerns and their issues back into the city's government and ensure that the services are delivered. Okay. And that's where we do a lot of work. We serve the community, and of course, I also served on other committees of council. So on that, I'm responsible for public safety for my party, the Democratic Alliance. Good. I'm also a member of the Municipal Public Accounts Committee and oversight on Legislature Committee. So
you're quite busy.
Yes, it's quite busy. It's quite busy.
Okay. But Michael, let me ask you. I mean, you're married. You have your own family. Yes. Once that you thought about getting into politics and running for city council, what was their reaction? Because a lot of people, for example, in Taiwan today, would not want their family members get involved in local politics, especially elected offices. Yes. So what was their reaction?
I think the reaction was very much the
Were
same.
they surprised?
They were surprised, but my then girlfriend, but now wife, she was very understanding. She knew it was not a ordinary job.
Okay.
It was not a job where I would go somewhere and come back. I would leave home very early in the mornings. 9 to 5. Okay. And I would come home whenever my work is done, and that could be very late in the evenings.
Exactly.
So she was very accommodating. My family were very supportive of me.
Good.
And I think the biggest comfort for me was that I could always go home and understand that they are there for me.
Good.
And they are not going to complain as to what I had to do today. So, you know, that for me, being a councillor of City of Johannesburg is very important.
Of course. And we, of course, have many, Taiwanese immigrants, that have settled all over the world, including South Africa. We'll talk about that a little later in the program. And we also have, second, third, fourth generations of immigrants that are born locally, and they are now also in a position to possibly get involved in local political processes and try to gain the voice for the overseas Taiwanese community. So based on your experience, Michael, what would be something that you would, recommend to the younger people who may be watching our program today, and they say, hey, Michael is a city councillor in Johannesburg. It's cool. I want to be like Michael. What would you recommend to them?
Well, I'm not sure about wanting to be like Michael, but certainly Raymond, it's a challenge. It's a career.
Yes.
And I think it's a milestone for the Taiwanese immigrants that I was certainly encouraged to take part in the local politics. And the more that you are involved, the more that you understand. And I think there is a lone voice in City Council at the moment, which I'm the only, Asian, City Councillor. But if there were more in the other cities, in fact, I would encourage the younger generation to take up job offers within the government and become a public servant. I think that's where you really will make a difference. And although, the pay may not be great, but I think it's something that's within one's life that one could achieve a lot and do a lot for the community.
Yes, that's why they call it public service.
Yes.
All right. Michael, South Africa, a lot of people have visited, there many times, including myself. But, despite all the attributes and the beauty of the country, a lot of people are concerned. It's about the social stability and also ethnic violence. All right, because we remember back in April of 2015, there was, violence erupted because of, xenophobia. And let me ask you this. How serious is the status today, xenophobia? Are people still concerned, especially among the overseas Taiwanese community, about unexpected violence that will erupt, that will bring some adverse impact on their livelihood?
Just in the city of Johannesburg alone, I mean, we have just under 5 million residents.
Okay.
And out of that, there are so many, we call them foreigners, foreign migrant workers that we can't keep up counting. So it is a concern where you have a city that's so densely populated with people from all walks of life. There are bound to be some frictions. And I'll not make an excuse, I'll not in fact hide the, as you mentioned it earlier, the safety aspect, the security and the stabilities. Earlier this year, 2015, in April, it was very sad. It was a massive xenophobic attack on foreigners, mostly on the foreign Africans coming into South Africa. It always erupted as something very small, and it will turn out to be at times a massacre. In the townships, in the informal settlements, there are especially, violent attacks on each other. And associated with that is a lot of criminal behavior, looting of businesses, stealing, robberies. So for any foreigner, be it a tourist or investor or businessman, you should be concerned.
Yes.
You should be worried. And it's something that we don't like to see, we don't want to see, and we certainly, don't encourage.
Okay.
We are against it. Soon after the xenophobic violence broke out, I, together with the other community leaders within the Chinese and Taiwanese communities, we called for people to march against xenophobic attacks. And the support was overwhelming. I mean, we took the streets.
Yes.
There were other interested groups. We were right in the front for some reason because I think our banner was the biggest. And I remember I was interviewed by an
local TV.
No, in fact, the accent sounded American.
Oh, okay.
So the journalist asked me, the attacks not on Chinese people. No. Why are you on the streets with your African friends? I said, that's because we don't want to see any more attacks. We don't want to see anybody harmed.
Okay.
We have to promote peace.
Yes.
And I think that being a Taiwanese person, that's what we promote and that's what we preach.
Yes.
It's peace and unity in the entire world. So it's very sad to see when a very small incident, turns out to be a racial attack or a cultural attack.
Okay.
It's something that's quite devastating. But we are certainly against it. We do condemn it.
Okay. And Michael, there are, according to statistics, over 40,000 Taiwanese immigrants all over South Africa today. From your conversations with them, do you think that xenophobia is still something of a concern to most of them? Or people believe that what happened in 2015 is a one isolated incident, is not going to be a pattern? It's not likely to be a repeat of what happened in 2015. What's their sentiment?
Unfortunately, according to academics, and I'm quoting that throughout the recorded events, it seems as if it's a reoccurring incidents.
Really?
Touch wood, we don't want it to see again happening in 2016.
No.
But I think for the Taiwanese community, it's something that we must, take a lot of care.
Yeah,
precaution. Of course, take a lot of precautions. We are quite spread out throughout South Africa, with Johannesburg and other major cities such as Durban and Cape Town, Bloemfontein being mostly populated. And these are also the big cities where xenophobic attacks often, happen.
Yes.
So we help each other, we watch each other's backs, and if there's anything that happens in one part of the country, we're sure to communicate it very quickly to our fellow Taiwanese friends and residents within the entire South Africa.
Okay. And do you think there could be lingering impact, adversely, of course, on South Africa's local economy, especially what has been the likely impact on Taiwanese businesses in South Africa? Are people now a little more reluctant in terms of making investment decisions? Are they more concerned about, hey, if I put the money in there today, what if there's another widespread, violence?
Yes.
Will I be able to retrieve my investment? What's the sentiment today?
Yes. The investment confidence, I think it's diminishing.
Okay.
Although it's still at an acceptable level.
Okay.
Investors are coming into the country. I think after having making an informed decision.
Okay.
So from that aspect, I don't think investors' confidence are too shaken.
Okay.
However, on the smaller scale economics of a city or an area, that's where people are affected badly. There are always criminal elements within the xenophobic incidents. There are always criminals looking for opportunities to loot the shops, to steal. So I think from that aspect, people will think twice to open up shop or open up business in areas that's more prone to xenophobic attacks or any other form of violence.
Okay, and Michael, you in many ways, to the 40,000 Taiwanese immigrants, first, second, or third generation living in South Africa, you are a role model. You have, additional responsibility as a community leader. At a time like this, when, many Taiwanese immigrants are concerned about social stability, about ethnic-based, the violence against them, would you think that this will be a good time for some of the younger generations to really seriously think about getting involved in the local political or public affair process, to understand, if they can gain the voice, have a presence, they are able to make some differences, like you mentioned, to, protect their, families better, to protect their investment better, to make sure that South Africa remains a very attractive destination for immigrants and also for investments. What do you think?
Certainly, Raymond. I think it's a social responsibility.
Yes.
One needs to take one step further and say that I would like to take my social responsibility and make it my career choice. I think leaders will always come and go.
Yes.
Communities will always be led or serviced by different generations, as I was served by the generations before me.
Yes.
And I'm very grateful for that. I think it's now high time for me to do my bit. And I think that's the attitude our younger generations should adopt and say, it's now my time.
Yes.
It's my time to serve my community. Yes, one needs to look after oneself and one's family, but there's so much to do within a community. You don't have to become a politician. You don't have to become a public servant. You don't have to become the president of some, organization. But just being the responsible citizen that one should be, and say that I'm going to go do my bit, and I think that will change the society for so much more the better.
Yes. And finally, before we end this part of the program, Michael, is this something that also not just at the local level, but at the central government level in South Africa, they are also paying attention to try to prevent and alleviate the likelihood of another violence? Is this something of a national concern for the government officials in South Africa?
Yes, indeed. It's no longer just a national concern. I mean, in fact, it's quite an international concern.
Yes.
When South African President Zuma visited the other states within Africa, he had to apologize to the African states of what happened within South Africa. I think it's a concern that it's not just no longer in the front of your doorsteps, but it goes much further than that. We certainly hope to see there's much more that will be done to prevent similar events from happening. And a lot of that needs to be concentrated on information and intelligence. But I think it's, as a South African, not by birth, but by growing up, my bringing up, South Africans are very peaceful people. It's a nation that's very welcoming. So there's a lot of African kindness within everyone's heart. So I think that with the isolated incidents shouldn't be
paintbrushed
to investors and visitors coming to South Africa. I would certainly encourage you to come visit South Africa again.
I will. Okay.
And it's still a very beautiful country. There's a lot of opportunities.
Yes.
And I would certainly, encourage a lot of the Taiwanese youth to step out and go see Africa.
Okay, we'll do so. All right. We need to let's talk about, a lot of people have some, preconceived notions about Africa, about South Africa in particular. And people often, say that, if there were a God, that God put a lot of the, mineral deposits, precious metals in African continent, all of it dropped to the bottom. That's where South Africa is. But we know, South African economy today is a lot more advanced, a lot more diversified than just, natural minerals and, whatever other materials. But, the fact of the matter remains is we're also in a very interconnected world today. When the economy in one part of the world goes wrong, the ripple effect will definitely bring home, to wherever you are. So what is, based on your personal observation, what is the outlook for South African economy in 2016 and also for the African continent at large?
Raymond, this will be indeed my personal, I think, a very shallow observation.
You're very modest.
That unfortunately the weak part of the African economy is that it's dictated to by the Western world.
Okay.
So, anybody should sneeze at one of the offices in Wall Street,
Yes.
I mean, we catch a cold in Johannesburg. So, on that perspective, it's unfortunate that, the currency, the South African rand, is very volatile.
Yes.
You would see in the recent drops against the United States dollars. That has a tremendous effect for the exporters and the importers. A lot of the importers are crying all the way to the bank and not laughing anymore.
Yeah.
But South Africa remains a destination for investors and the vast resources. In the early days, where they would just dig gold out of ground, you can imagine that the wealth of natural resources that's deposited in southern Africa, I shouldn't say just South Africa, it's still there.
Yes.
So the mining business is still huge. There's still a lot of business potentials. Being a leader of Africa, South Africa has to set a lot of examples in taking the first steps in a lot of the global business initiatives. The one thing the South African government is spearheading is renewable and green energy. So that it's very popular amongst your new trend of investors. Yes. But South Africa remains quite a favorable and a preferred investment destination for, I think, global investors.
Okay. And so would you think that despite all the uncertainties that we discussed earlier in the program, you still think South Africa is the, gold diggers' heaven today, as people used to call it? You still think that the potential for, wealth, for, business opportunities is still out there?
I certainly do think so.
Okay.
The reason is that there are still so much more unexplored opportunities and areas in business, in industry, in technology, in commerce. As if you compare it to the more advanced and developed Western countries where there are so much more competition and the opportunities are less, I think South Africa remains a top investment destination.
Good. And now let's shift the gear a little bit, Michael. Let's talk about the local Taiwanese community. We mentioned earlier that there are over 40,000 Taiwanese immigrants living and working or going to school in South Africa. And tell us a little bit about the communities there, because I know you're in Johannesburg, but you probably travel to other parts of the country as well. And do you see some differences among the local Taiwanese communities throughout South Africa, or do people mostly shared the same things, same concerns.
Yes. Raymond, I just stood down as the president of the African Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce in July this year. So when I was serving my term, I obviously had to travel to all the other chambers. We are very close-knit Taiwanese community in South Africa. So basically, everybody knows everybody. And I think that makes us a big family. One thing that concerns everybody is, of course, it's public safety. The social security. It touches everybody. It's the main topic when we speak to each other. That's one thing that we try to do for each other a lot. As soon as we hear of something, we pass on the information to the others. So in that way, we try to protect each other. And of course, there's a lot of other happy events that when we do get together, we certainly make it an event. We are all of us who are so far away from home. So we have to make home where we are. So I think that's where our Taiwanese spirit comes out a lot.
All right. And as far as, education for the younger generation, do they have, do you guys have Chinese schools there, for maybe the younger generations who were born in South Africa still be able to have the opportunity to learn about the mother tongue of their parents? Does that still happen?
Yes, it's very important.
Yes.
And that's the one thing that the Taiwanese community is looking into.
Yes.
Just about in all the major cities that we have a Chinese school where we teach Chinese Mandarin, the Chinese traditional Chinese Mandarin. My own child goes to learn Chinese because they were born overseas. But I, as a parent, as a father, I would want my child to learn our own culture and our own language, and very much the same way that my father was to me and my mother was to me.
Okay, good. And given the fact that you are very active in South Africa in terms of not just local politics, but also in terms of the local Taiwanese community, Michael, it's admirable that we have also learned that you went to the United States and you lobbied for Taiwan's participation in the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. Tell us a little bit about that experience, Michael.
It was an initiative by the World Taiwanese Chamber of Commerce President, Mr. Yang Xin. He called upon all the continental chambers to be represented, and I was luckily to represent the African Chamber to go to Washington and lobby for Taiwan to be included in TPP. It was a mission that I needed to represent my country, Taiwan, to make a statement, to make a point. And of course, I spoke with a different accent when I arrived in Washington. I remember vividly one official said, where are you from?
Come from? Yes.
So I said, I come from South Africa. And very sharply, he picked it up. He said, but TPP has nothing to do with South Africa, so why are you here? So I said to him, I'm here for Taiwan. Not here for South Africa, I'm here for Taiwan.
Good.
And I, of course, explained to him the ties between the Taiwanese investors and Taiwanese businesses in South Africa, and of course with the African Growth Opportunities Act, a lot of the Taiwanese businesses produce goods that's exported to the United States. So there's the Taiwanese tie. But I think it was a mission for me that I had to be part of the delegation and go voice our stance of Taiwan to the United States.
Yes, you're very modest, Michael, because I learned that you were a big part of that delegation and certainly done a lot for Taiwan. And finally, I want to ask you, Michael, I mean, you've been away from Taiwan for many years, but you still come back to Taiwan to visit, friends, relatives, also, get involved, with the people in Taiwan, whether they are in or out of the government. And in the sense that you have, a lot of compassion for the people of Taiwan. And you understand that one thing across, ethnic, across political lines in Taiwan is that we would like to have a broader, international presence, that is more commensurate with Taiwan's economic strength. But however, because of international political considerations, Taiwan, we're not represented, in many of the international organizations. And based on your own international background and experiences, what would be some of the recommendations that you can make, to us, ordinary people in Taiwan, to try to collectively help Taiwan to have a bigger voice, a bigger presence on the international stage?
Raymond, I think I am perhaps overambitious to give advice on this, but I think as a personal suggestion,
yes,
that I would like to see the people of Taiwan to be more actively involved in the world's current affairs.
Good.
We are far too quiet
when
it comes to many international issues.
Yes.
There are so much potential, there are so much knowledge, so much expertise from Taiwan that we need to use it. And when we do use it, we need to make sure that we are at the focal point. We are leading, current affairs, international issues. We need to voice our opinion to make sure that when something
people
is said,
take notice.
it's said from Taiwan. It's no longer just not made in Taiwan anymore, but it's said from Taiwan. I think that's the little maybe suggestion
That's
I
a
have.
very sound advice. Michael, truly being an honor and a pleasure to have you on the program today. Certainly want to wish you and the family all the best in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you very much for watching our program today. I'll see you next time on Macro View Television. Thank you.